Hello, I wanted to show you something that I came up with. The inverse 4-bar, or the X bar is what I'm calling it. So it all came about when I needed a way to get the ball from this conveyor mechanism onto the claw, but the claw was too big to fit within the size constraints. So your typical 4-bar looks like this, where all the sides remain parallel, but if you flip it in the middle, so now it looks like an X, with one side remaining stationary, the other completely flips 180 degrees with every rotation. But be careful if you're building it yourself, you do not want to have a screw in the middle, as the middle X part needs to be able to slide against itself. This is really the main challenge when actually constructing this and going from the concept to the three-dimensional build for my actual robot. Flaws. Alright, so the major flaws are that, of course, the mechanism needs to slide against itself, so it's very hard to kind of brace everything. The typical 4-bar YouTube video tells you to make kind of 2 linkages either side, but I did not have the room or the time to make that, so what I did instead was I experimented with different setups, like using counterweights. In the end, I went with rubber bands and I tried to reinforce the middle bar that gear is on, because the bar would flex and so would the actual physical mechanism itself. When the claw reaches its max state, either as high up or as high down as it can go, the gear tends to jump teeth and that shreds that red plastic gear. That's because, as you can see, the bar is flexing, even though I've had it reinforced, and the physical mechanism itself would flex. So after every match, I would have to make sure all the screws were tight, but not too tight, to lock everything up. Another big problem is that the claw was just barely big enough to wrap around the ball, so if the ball didn't land in exactly the right spot, then I'd have no hope of actually picking it up. If I were to redo it and go back, I would have definitely made a simpler machine, maybe just a claw bot with a big claw and not a huge conveyor that leads into a separate piece, because that's basically 2 different bots you have to design. And I only had me on my team for this, so that meant a lot of long nights. So if you're actually going to physically attempt to build this yourself, priority number 1 is going to be reinforcing it. So I used a lot of rubber bands. As you can see, this little X pattern here, the little knots were just knots to get the length of the rubber band right. I also had a rubber band running along the top. I just put a bunch of rubber bands on to see what amount of tension worked. So you're definitely going to want to use more building materials and have more of a plan. But when you're on a huge time crunch and when it's just a project for school and not a huge competition for a lot of money or something, then it's fine. Also, it's a great learning experience, just knowing how different mechanical linkages work, being able to see the design in your head, and being able to bring it from the design to the physical, real, three-dimensional world. Being able to reinforce everything and get your cables properly managed. It's pretty cool. Alright, what worked? It definitely looked pretty cool. It was a very unique and interesting build. There was nothing really like it that I saw. I mean, I did kind of model it myself. For some reason, I was thinking about how the bones in the forearm are, and how they're usually crossed in an X pattern when you pick stuff up. And your arm, arms tend to work most of the time, so I really underestimated how much work and how much reinforcement it would need. But when it worked, it did work quite well. It got the height it needed, and due to the conveyor belt's precision, when it worked, it was able to pick up a ball and actually drop it off where it needed to be, and also I could use the claw to knock off what other people had already gotten in their competitions. I actually ended up getting 4th, which sounds great, but then you realize it's out of 6 and 2 people's bots stopped working. So the key takeaways are definitely to make sure to reinforce this like you would a normal 4-bar. Anyway guys, thanks for watching, and if you end up trying it out, let me know. Alright, have a good one.